Okay, it says that we are live on YouTube. Board President Golick, you have the gavel.
Thank you. So just to start off, this meeting is being held pursuant to Executive Order N29-20, which authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. Members of the public are encouraged to observe and participate in the teleconference. What you can do is, if you wish to make a comment tonight, is go ahead and shoot an email to admin@westlakecharter.com. We ask that any comments be limited to 250 words or less. All efforts will be made to read your comment into the record, but some comments may not be read due to time limitations. Those comments received after the item is heard will be made part of the record before the end of the meeting. And with that, I will ask Ms. Wells to go ahead and take roll.
Okay. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes. Sorry. I tried to get ahead of it.
Like, I could see her. Josh?
I know.
Can you take a thumbs up, Hope?
I'm here.
There we go.
I'm here.
Okay.
Michelle?
Yes.
Vasa?
Oh, yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yeah.
And Jed?
Yes.
You have a quorum.
So celebrations, and in an interesting twist, none of you are in alphabetical order on my screen this time, which people seem happy about. So I'm going to go ahead and, do the roulette game. So that will make Michelle first, and then Amy if she wants to play.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Super excited to go first because I know that others may be just as excited, but first day of school was amazing. It was so nice to see and hear the teachers' voices, see the excitement on the kids' faces, and just have the Westlake vibe in our home. So it was great.
Great. Miss Wells, and then, okay, so Mr. Ike, you're next on the screen. So you can go now or you can save it. It's up to you. I'm not making that mistake again. So, Amy?
I will celebrate that I haven't been able to sleep for 2 nights. No, really, it's a good thing because my heart is full, my bucket is overflowing and looking for a place to dump excess love. It just feels so amazing to be part of our school right now in the weirdest time in the world. But we worked hard all summer. The teachers worked hard. The staff worked hard. John has not slept since March 12th. And all of that came together, and we all kind of held our breath Wednesday morning while we were out there on the blacktop yelling, yay! We all held our breath, but this school never ceases to amaze me that when we need to do something, we hunker down and we just crushed it. There you go. Go ahead, John, follow that.
Hard to do. I'll follow the only way I can, and that is I'll save all my Westlake celebrations for my slides, and I will celebrate my daughter Abigail Jane Ike, 8 years old, 3rd grade, and after the first day of school, got off that little Chromebook and said, I love my teacher, and I love school. And I was like, well, my work here is done. That is awesome. So, hey, the love for her teacher came through the Chromebook, and that was my big fear is can we make that connection digitally? And, hey, it's working in my house. So a big celebration to our teacher, Ms. Ho, and to my daughter who's digging school. I'm super happy about that. It's a great celebration.
Josh, then Shannon.
Well, I'm going to ditto everybody else that school's back. The kids are back. The kids are liking it. I'm very impressed with how the teachers have so quickly related to the kids, even though it's through a distance, and are getting to know them with all the different check-ins throughout the day, and it's a really good feeling.
Shannon and Jed.
So I will also celebrate the first day of school. In a video that I received today from a teacher who I'm guessing you can all guess who it was. showing me all the little breakouts and how excited they were to have all of their students in their breakout groups and how they were very nervous, but then they were really loving it and thought it was a really actually cool way to be able to watch the students while still kind of, having that like they were all together vibe. So.
Okay, Jed, then Vasa.
And while I celebrate that, I got randomly interrupted by my wife saying, "Have you seen this stuff on Facebook, what they're doing at Westlake? They're all yelling on the playground." And she was like, "You're a board member. Are you supposed to be tracking this stuff? Look how awesome this stuff is." So anyway, it's great to be interrupted with such great news.
Vasa, then Nancy.
Hi, everybody. There's so much to celebrate, but from my teacher perspective, coming onto campus, it was just so noticeable and tangible how much work all our classified staff and our support staff and base staff had done over the summer, and of course our admin staff, to put structures for teachers to come back into campus. And I almost didn't have to think, because there were so many items laid out for me to be able to just get the work I needed to get done and prepared, that it was really cool. And then when Michelle was speaking about kids coming back, and in particular her kid, I don't know if you guys know this, but I had Asaya in my class last year, and that kid just holds a special place in my heart. He was like my right-hand guy, and our time was cut short, which is sad. But it's cool to hear that he's enjoying school, and maybe I'll have him an elective in the future, because I love that kid.
Nancy, then Ashley.
Cool. So I guess it's very expected that celebration of the first day of school yesterday was pretty awesome. But I just want to celebrate Amber because, as you all know, it's not just the admin team; it is leadership at Wade that makes a huge difference. And I just want to celebrate you because you have done so much. And Amber knows this, obviously, because I'm sending her notes whenever there's a post on the Wade page. And I'm like, you are the most patient person in the world. And thank God it's you. And quite frankly, not me. Because I know my patience would be super low with just so much going on and so much work that's happening behind the scenes, not just by the teachers and admin team, but also Amber and the Wave Board as well. So I just wanted to celebrate all the hard work that goes into making sure that all the parents and families are happy, because it's that's more than half the battle. So thanks.
Ashley, then Sean.
I've been rifling through my mind on what I'm going to say. I have a classroom aide who is making a really difficult transition for an inclusion student. Amazing, and is just amazing. And I'm like, I don't know what you do in your role here, because it's so confusing and new, and we've talked about it. He's been amazing, and that family feels so supported, which is tricky when we're not here, when they can't be here. But in my 16 years of teaching, I think this was the hardest lead up, short of my first year of teaching, that I can remember, that I can remember feeling about. But the hindsight is, I think it was the easiest first day of school I've ever had, which was just a weird reflection I had kind of midday. I'm like, yeah, this is cake. I guess we got it all planned out, right? So it's kind of a cakewalk. By 9:08, I had 17 of my 18 kinders logged in morning meeting, and I was like, they're all here. They're all here. And the other one was getting on through the Google Voice, so thanks to that. And then I finished my day with the farewell in the Google Classroom. The parent had written, it's a parent who I had my first year at Westlake, and she was pregnant with this little boy who's in my classroom this year, which I can't believe I've been here that long. And he said, I had a fantastic day. I love Mrs. Patel. So the sweet kinders. So just lots of things to celebrate. My sweet boys who are
on their own all night tonight. It's gonna be like Lord of the Flies at my house downstairs. But they've kind of blown me away. They've got their list and they work really well with lists, and so yeah, lots to celebrate. Thanks, Ashley. Sean?
So again, with the first day of school, a week ago, my older two started school, and 15 minutes before school started, my internet went out. So I was rushing around trying to figure out if I could hotspot things to phones, and it was just crazy. And I discovered that no, I couldn't. And so I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to try to do school on the phone, and I'm trying to send emails to their teachers saying, please don't mark them absent, they're really here. And then yesterday, we just kind of logged on, and there it was. He was in class, so that was lovely. I can do without that stress.
I know the Zoom didn't work yesterday for Meet the Teacher. You would have thought that the world was ending. At least it was for me, because I just have so much stress myself about it. I would like to celebrate communication. So now that I am flown the nest, so to speak, at a new school, not that they're not communicating, but they certainly, I don't know that anyone communicates to the level at which Westlake Charter communicates. So I wanted to celebrate the plans and the FAQs and Amber answering questions on Facebook and admin always being available by email. And I think it just, we communicate like rock stars, and so I wanted to celebrate that. With that, are there any other board comments that need to be made right now? Seeing shaking heads, I'm going to move on to public comments. Mr. Ike, have we received public comment?
Yes, I was just checking now. We do have one public comment. Would you like me to read it into the record?
Yes, please.
All right. It says board comment in the subject line, and it says, living through 2 days of the 2020-2021 school year and reading countless comments on the Parents WCS Facebook page, I want to say what so many families are saying all around and thinking, thank you, 3 exclamation points. Thank you, Westlake admin, teachers, staff, volunteers, and families. This is hard. Yes, this is new and difficult, but our amazing school and amazing families make this the best place to be, whether in easy times or in hard times. Thanks to the whole Westlake community for all of the focus, determination, and hard work that is making this distance learning model possible for all of us. The planning and execution are tremendous all around, and our teachers are just so caring and skilled. They are incredible! Exclamation point. We all miss all of you. Carissa Richards Johnson. I was going to say it was written by John Ike, because I was like, yeah. Hey, thank you, Mrs. Johnson. That's fantastic. And Amy Wells, I will forward this to you for the record. And
Thank you, sir.
if you give me one moment, Hope, I'm just going to make sure there's not another one behind it. So I apologize. A. Wells. I'll send that to you. And let me check the inbox here. It's funny when you're streaming live through YouTube and you got a Google Meet open and a couple documents and some slides, your computer goes a little slower than usually. Come on, computer.
Waiting for a brownout at the building.
Right, just okay. I think that's the only board comment. That's the only one.
Okay. That will bring us to board reports, and just for anyone watching that wants to make a comment, we'll certainly be checking back at the admin@westlakecharter.com email address throughout the night. So there's still opportunity to comment on items on the agenda. The first report we have tonight is our wave report from Amber.
Hi. So we've been doing so much stuff. Mr. Ike and I worked on this learning cooperative, and I mean, it definitely helped some families, and it was a lot of work, but I think it was totally worth it. And we had 175 students that were a part of this document, so had access to other families, and so we really did our best to reach out to everybody and get them hooked up if they needed to be hooked up. Plus, Base is amazing, and it's a great option as well. So I'm proud of our partnership on that, and that we really managed to get out to everybody.
And then, talking about the Wave Facebook page, I think everybody was nervous before school started. So everybody starts, asking questions and thinking the worst. And then what was beautiful as this week kind of progressed is people started sending me messages, posting on there how wonderful Meet the Teacher was and how they were nervous about it. But it ended up in some cases being better than it had ever been before to have that one-on-one time. And then people really liked the distance learning kits. It was like a little surprise bag for their kids, and they just really loved it. And then I got at least 30 messages after the coffee talk that people said they learned things, a lot of new families, and that it was just really nice to kind of see everybody's faces. And then all the questions we took, they were appreciative. And then the first day, everybody was nervous. They didn't know what to expect. And just as Mrs. Patel said, it was like, it just kind of came together, and it seemed to be easier than we had all worried it would be. And a lot of families then the next day were kind of going, okay, I think we can do this. This is really good. And our teachers are amazing. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I'm walking around my house like it's a mini school, and they're all engaged and having fun. And it could make me cry. It's just fantastic. And so this community appreciates all the hard work and energy that's been put into this. And then on the Wave side, we are scheduling our first virtual board meeting. That'll happen the first week of September. We're looking into some new things, like maybe a completely online spirit store. So we're researching that now. We have been looking at like some online auctions. People like the fall festival kind of silent auction baskets. Well, we could probably throw something like that together online, maybe do some other stuff. So right now we're brainstorming, and we'll put some information out there and try to get some feedback, and then, try to come up with some sort of little events until we see how the year is going to pan out. So we're working, and we're trying to make it as good as we can and continue building the community. So we appreciate you all. I know, I can't wait for the Wave Facebook page and the Spirit Day tomorrow.
That's so fun.
The shirts, because the signs that you all made have been fabulous, so the shirts will be really great too. And I also really appreciate the coffee talk, because I got one of my most favorite new sayings ever, and Mr. Ike knows this because he is the technological wizard. And I will use it now until the end of time. And I promised Mrs. Batten I'd drop that in this meeting. So thank you for opening the door for that. Amber, really, you've heard it tonight, but I just want to reiterate, thank you again for all you do. Like, the amount of effort you've put in. You are the best partner in crime as presidents go. And I am so happy to share a birthday with you and everything else. And so just thank you. Thank you immensely.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. That brings us to Charter Impact. So both Charter Impact and Development did not meet since our last board meeting. So we'll go ahead and skip those reports for tonight, if that's okay with the 2 chairs. I have a thumbs up from Shannon. You too, Nancy, you good? Yes, okay. So that will bring us to Finance and Sean.
Okay, so we did meet, obviously, or Hope would have said we didn't. So we got our normal update from Steve that we're getting to find out all the new and glorious financial wonders that are going on in the world and the state. But then we also started working on our goals for this year. So that was a discussion item for our last meeting, and it's on for action for our next meeting. And that was the sum total of our meeting.
Speaking of that, I have a conflict for the next meeting, Sean, so we'll have to talk. Governance also did not meet tonight, and so that will bring us to our executive director's report.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you, everybody. I have some slides I'll put up on the screen and make sure you can see them before I get started. It's the first week of school. Of course, there's quite a few celebrations. I'll try and walk right through them, but lots of people chiming in about how excited they are that the year has launched so well. Thumbs up if you can see my slide right there. Can you guys see my slide okay? No?
There it is.
There we go. There we go. I was like, I don't know how to fix that. I'll need a technological wizard for that. Oh, golly. Hope's making fun of me because during the coffee talk, my screen went goofy and I just touched the screen and it fixed itself. And I said, I'm a technological wizard, and I'll never live that down. All right, let's dive into
It was
this.
the best recovery ever, though, Mr. Ike. You recovered beautifully, and if you remember, I pointed it out to you because if anyone can roll with change and what comes at them is you, and how that made you no better leader right now than that.
No, you
So
did.
there's a lot of positives.
You did. You did. I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank you. Yeah, it was a great moment to be live on YouTube and be like, well, don't know how to fix that. Let's dive in and take a look at some celebrations. Obviously, we'd love to celebrate the web program where everyone belongs. A fantastic leadership program where our upper grade middle school students shepherd our sixth graders into middle school. And it all took place on Google Meet, like you're on right now. So this mentorship leadership program takes like 2 full days of training and then a full day to execute the orientation day. And this has never been done all online before, and it was a smash success. Mr. Locktev, Mrs. Chavez, Mrs. Erickson, a whole group of people are involved in this, but the real stars of the show, I think you agree, Vasa. Say again?
Mrs. Wells now as well.
And A-Dub is part of the show. But I think you'd agree the real stars of the show were the 8th grade leaders, the student leaders. They were just amazing. So great stuff from our web program. Hey, we're really kind of proud to celebrate that the safety protocols on campus are being done with fidelity and diligence every day. Our employees have their temperature scanned at the gate. They go through a verbal screening at the gate by our employees. You can see the little dots on the left side of the screen here that are all 6 feet apart, so that when we're on campus, we know how to stay 6 feet apart. You see Steve modeling what it is to stand on a dot. You know, just Westlake kind of going the extra mile to make sure that all the safety protocols are in place is really a celebration. Look, BASE is doing amazing stuff that you're going to hear about in a moment as far as BASE distance learning camps, but I have to celebrate the BASE summer program. The BASE team came in, did lots of training, really executed a fantastic summer program for some of our kids, and really paved the way for looking at what was possible for bringing people back on campus when that time is appropriate. And then we launched the school year, and I want to talk about the first 5 professional development. Now, this is the slide that I showed you a year ago today, but you can see the pictures. I mean, this is so 2019. Like all of us high-fiving, handshaking, hugging, like, 2019. Let's bring it forward to 2020. The Chromebook Coliseum, hundreds of people on Google Meets, me standing in the library with a microphone talking to like 60 computers at one time. I won't get into the details, but what I will tell you is this: you have never met a more innovative staff and willing group of participants to play silly games and do icebreakers and team building activities all through a digital landscape. This staff right here, this Westlake Charter School staff, I mean, you could throw them as many curveballs as you want. They knock it out of the park every time. I've been doing a lot of, culture building for the last 20 plus years. I've never done something like this and been more blown away by the people on the other side of the room. These teachers, these staff members got together and did some crazy, cool team building digitally in the first 5. I'll also talk in tonight's updates about some of the PD that we did. These distance learning kits, which we'll also talk about a little bit tonight, these things were the brainchild of a bunch of our leadership people who said, what would it look like if we could bridge the distance between home and school, really bridging that distance learning by sending physical materials home. Now, I know some schools send home like a stack of books, like I got 12 textbooks. But Westlake did what Westlake does and sprinkled a little Westlake on everything. Students were opening up these distance learning kits. They were produced beautifully with notes on top and customized materials inside. And then the parents driving through the distance learning pickup, it was a seamless pickup, and that was all because of Stacy Ramirez, Tony Alexander, and the entire office team who orchestrated behind the scenes the distribution of literally 1,000 individualized learning kits across 9 grade levels. I think as of today, out of 1,000 kits, there were still something like 28 not yet picked up. But that's a pretty solid distribution from that team. So such great stuff. I want to celebrate Amber Husted and Jen Kaiu for being part of the virtual coffee talk. Again, we've just never really lived in this virtual space like we are now, and it was such a home run. We were answering live Q&As. Amber did like a trivia thing, was giving away swag live on air. People were answering questions. It was just a great show. And then this piece right here, if you didn't see this, let me just take 30 seconds. This is the platform for Meet the Teacher, where you would go and click on Mrs. Patel, and you'd watch like a 3-minute video where Mrs. Patel is introducing herself to the kids, and then you had a one-on-one scheduled meeting to meet with Mrs. Patel after you had watched her video, and it was an absolute home run. It was all these videos, I mean, it'll bring a tear to your eye if you watch these videos. Plus, this link down here allowed everyone to meet other people on campus, instructional aides, yard duties, base employees, office staff, administration. People really got a sense to meet the whole team. And I tell you, even when we come back, I think this is a practice we'll continue. This personalized method for Meet the Teacher. Such a great piece. Now this is beautiful. This is a picture of our first day of school in distance learning camps. Now you can see obviously the kiddos are 6 feet apart, but they're engaged on their little headphones with their classroom. And here they are in a safe location being supervised by base employees. The whole team brought this together. Melissa Grunholtz for the win with the furniture. Jen Holbrook for the win with organizing how everybody's going to move around campus. The entire base team for facilitating the learning in all these spaces. Just such a multitude of people involved with this success. We'll talk about it later, but we have many students who are being served who are staff children, several students who are students who really had nowhere else to go, and the families were like, could you help us? And here we are helping. There's some really good work going on here in our base distance learning camps. These are some pictures that we stole off Facebook, so sorry if there's a copyright infringement in Facebook, but it was something else to go across Facebook and start to see all of our families joyfully celebrating their own children on the first day of school as if it were like normal to start your first day of school from home. Just so beautiful to see the smiling faces of our children and our families celebrating the first day of school, even though the first day of school was level 1 distance learning. And who's that right there? Your Mrs. Patel, on the first day of school teaching. And the kiddo right there. So just a really great way to open the year. I'm going to talk to a couple.
I didn't see this one.
Oh, you didn't see that picture?
I've been all over Facebook, so I'm glad you picked that one to share. I missed it.
Monica Darris is really a hero to me. She's my Facebook sleuth. She gets in and finds stuff all over Facebook. If there's something on Facebook, you can't get it by Monica. She's our communications expert, man. She's everywhere. Hey, I'm going to go through strategic actions and then into updates. A few strategic actions I'd just like to kind of point out. We did alter our professional development plans this year. I typically tell the board about the professional development plans that we utilize to open up the school year. Last year, this is the slide from last year. You can see all the dark blue areas are the areas where we gave staff team time and individual work time, to work in their classroom and work as teams. That slide right there is last year, and that was the most amount of personalized time we'd ever given to our staff. Well, then you go forward to this year, and you look at all the dark blue on that slide, and it's literally doubled, right? It went from 18 hours, it's 20 some odd hours to 30 hours, because people needed more time to prepare this year. We still did some great culture pieces and a few pieces, but you can see the yellow here, that's Meet the Teacher, and Meet the Teacher, took up a lot more time this year than it did last year, and so we had to give lots of this blue time right here. Now, one thing we innovated on this year was these deliverables was a little website, and you'd find a topic, and then one of our staff will have made a little video. So here's our brand new school psychologist, Dr. Blair, and our counselor, Jessica Cravoy, made an incredible SEL and trauma-informed practices video for our staff. That everyone had an opportunity to watch, and so we thought it was kind of cool to just make all the videos asynchronously and put them in the tank so staff could walk through some learning in professional development without having to be all pulled together in the library, and we're very proud of that work. This is a strategic planning piece that includes Westlake staff, our community, our partnership with Wave. I'm going to unpack these childcare options because they're really, Amy had said I haven't slept since March. This is probably what's kept me up the most at night. The reality is, I knew in my heart of hearts as the executive director of Westlake Charter School that once our teachers got to be where they are, once our teachers got to work, school was going to be fine. But this piece here, this child care piece, we don't have all the control over. And so I'm going to just kind of walk through some of the work we've done here. This option 1 is a collaboration with Wave, and we created this opportunity for people to create these learning cooperatives with their classmates. Families are working together to support one another and say, oh, you're in my class, we're in the same class, maybe I can watch the kids on Tuesday, you can watch the kids on Wednesday. We have 175 individual students whose families have signed up for this, and they're working together. To be totally transparent, it's co-led by Wave and Westlake Charter School as a team, but there's still many challenges to overcome here. The reality is, getting people to work together in this way is really hard work. It is people are reluctant to work with another family that they don't know, and so if you're looking at this spreadsheet and going, gosh, I don't know the Lochtef family, I'm not sure if I want to reach out to them and work this out. So there's been a lot of individual phone calls from the Wave team. Amber Husted's team has been brilliant to reach out and say, hey, do you need help connecting with another family? And I'm really proud of the work that the Wave team is doing to bring this to fruition. Now, we call that option 1 because we want everyone to have a safe place for their child to be on during distance learning, and this option is obviously free, right? So this is a great option 1. Option 2 for us is we flipped our before and after school Explorer program, which is so funny. It only existed before and after school. Well, now it really only exists during school, between 8 and 2. So we've completely flipped the model and said, if you need a safe place to be during the hours of distance learning, we have a place for you to be. Now, it's a great option in that, it's facilitated by our Westlake Charter School base employees. Some yard duties are involved in there as well. So we've upped our staffing capacity by bringing our yard duties on board there. It's staffed from 8 to 2. So during distance learning, we're able to help facilitate. But, the reality is the price tag on it is $225 a week. So we had to make full and partial scholarships available because we knew that we couldn't say, hey, I'm assuming you need a safe place for your child, but what if you can't afford $225 a week? We can't deny our families the opportunity to safe place. And that's partly why it's so important for us to have this partnership with Wave to say, hey, could we get you into a learning cooperative? And if not, how do we get you a full or partial scholarship to get into our base program during the day? Now, again, there are a lot of challenges to this program. I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple of them verbally, and I'll ask if there's any questions. First of all, there's a capacity issue, right? We have 12 employees. We have up to these 6 different spaces: a kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and then a combined 6, 7, 8 room. Each room can hold 12 kids. So we have room for 72 students. So we have a capacity issue. Now, can we increase capacity by hiring more people? We could. We're also running out of space on campus, but we could be flexible. The problem is the capacity issue isn't just physically on campus or even staffing wise, but the capacity issue will also be a financial capacity issue, which I'll share next. The scholarship decision tree is a very complicated decision tree, right? Because just to give a scholarship or not give a scholarship seems like it'd be a pretty easy metric, right? Oh, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, then maybe you should get a full or partial scholarship to come to base camp. Well, we've run into these very personalized situations where, this family qualifies for free and reduced lunch, but may have a parent at home who's currently unemployed. Well, they can actually stay home with their child and provide a safe distance learning place, whereas this family over here does not qualify for free and reduced lunch because it's a single parent who is an essential worker and working 60 hours a week. This person doesn't qualify for free and reduced lunch, but actually really needs this base camp. And so very quickly we became aware of the decision-making process to determine who could or could not qualify for a full or partial scholarship has been complex. And what we've kind of reverted to is kind of the way we do everything at Westlake. It's been personalized. We've been picking up the phone and calling every single family who has applied to be a part of the program and trying to figure out how we can best support every single family. So then the last complication or challenge is the expense versus revenue implications. And we're going to talk about budget during the updates tonight, but we have to realize if we fully staff base the way it is currently staffed, and we run it for all year, 36 weeks, that if we take in zero revenue, if we just fill it up with 72 students, all with full scholarships, that will cost the organization roughly $360,000. So whatever you were planning on your budget this year, minus $360,000 for that implication. Now, we can run through some numbers. The very first week, this week, we had 38 people interested in base, but only 23 showed up. Of the 23 who showed up, some were staff, so they don't pay, and some were scholarship, some were not scholarship. Looking at the numbers for next week, week 2, we see the interest level going up. Again, remember we have a capacity of 72 students. We have, look at the numbers here, 57 potentially signed up for next week, and just like in week 1, maybe it'll be less than that many show up. But again, if we start to play with the numbers and go, well, what if out of the 57 who showed up, X number qualified for child action and X number paid something like a partial scholarship? What if we generated $3,000 worth of revenue? We'll show you on a budget slide that more or less every single week that we run base at this staffing capacity, it costs us about $10,000 round numbers. So we can easily say, okay, based on next week's numbers, if we bring in $3,000, we'll lose $7,000. And if you lose $7,000 over the next 10 weeks, the next 20 weeks, the next 30 weeks, you can kind of do the math real easily on that. I think it's just important as a board that when we're charged with the fiduciary responsibility of our organization, we think about the budget, that this is a budgetary piece that's already built into our budget. We made base assumptions built into our budget, but back then we assumed both expenditure and revenue. If we lose the revenue, then the expenditure becomes a budget liability that we'll talk about going forward. Last piece on this that I want to be very clear about is that we're very equity conscious about option 1 and option 2. We're very personalization conscious about option 1 and option 2. Our mission is to reach out to every person and to make sure every person has a place to be. We have not run into a capacity issue in week 1. Also, nobody in week 1 who expressed interest in base was turned away because of financial realities. And we, based on the current numbers for next week, are realizing the same for next week. Now, this may just be a week-by-week metric that we're working on. Are we meeting or exceeding capacity? And are we ensuring that everybody who has a financial need is served by our program? And as of week 1 and as of week 2, with the numbers we're looking at for week 2, we believe that we will not have exceeded capacity, nor will anybody have been turned away due to financial need. So that was a mouthful of words, but I gotta tell you, I think this is the part that keeps me awake the most at night. Because if 40% of our students are free and reduced lunch, that's 400 of 1,000. To consider the possibility of expanding this program to the actual need, if that were to come to fruition, it could be a really scaled implication. So I put that in front of the board so that you have that information, and I'll certainly be available week by week to kind of update you on that if there's any thoughts on it. Any questions on this piece before I move on? I just wanted you to know all the hard work that's going on in this area. Very proud of Jen Holbrook, Steve Corvink, Amber Husted, and everybody who's working on this problem in the background. Cool. Okay, I want to talk through the communications innovations quickly. I'm just very proud that, we've developed this return to school fall 2020, 2021 website with this little, dashboard indicator of what level of reopening we're in. I really am proud of the work that the entire admin team has done to build our return to school fall 2020 handbook. This handbook is like 50 pages and a little overwhelming, but I think once school opened yesterday, a lot of it was like, oh, yeah, I'm glad that's written down. That makes sense. It's funny. It's almost easier to understand once it all starts to come to fruition. And I love this little expanding FAQ page. So there's lots of answers on this website and in these communications if you're looking for them. Other innovations that I love, on the parent side, Coffee Talk, the virtual Meet the Teacher. We have these innovative ways that we're trying to engage our parents. I love that Amber already said, ways trying to dream up new ways to engage our families in this new reality. I talked to you about our staff and the way that they were engaging, with one another and professional developing and collaborating in innovative ways. But this is just a couple of snapshots of how students are being engaged in innovative ways. There's a first grade class, Mrs. Kaya, who was in today, doing some amazing team building stuff. You had first graders managing Google Meet and just crushing it. And we're so proud of the work that's going on out there. But this is our very own board member, Mr. Lockteff. One of his students, held up an orb that is what was it called, boss? With a little lightning bolts in it.
One of those glass plasma balls.
Plasma,
things, with the electricity.
Yeah, so Vossa took that and turned it into, I wish he'd send it to all of you guys. He turned it into an opening video today that sent him swirling through space through the help of a green screen, and he told the students that he was now lost in time from touching this plasma ball. And at the end of this video, it wasn't just a silly video, he turned it into a hook for a lesson. He said, I'm lost in time. The only way you can get me back to class is by unlocking the code. Go to Google Classroom, click on the opening lesson, and it'll unlock the code that'll bring me back. That type of on-the-spot innovation, it was day one where the plasma ball appeared on Google Meet. Vossa took a picture of it and turned it into a video, and this is the admin team. They all watched it this morning. I'm just telling you, I am absolutely floored by the innovation that's happening across the board with our teachers. Every single moment of every day is a learning opportunity for them and the students, and it's really engaging work. The updates tonight, I'll do a couple. Steve, I think, is going to do one. I think Hope is going to do one tonight. So I'm going to talk enrollment, attendance, staffing. Steve's going to talk budget. Hope's going to talk reopening guidelines. On the enrollment side, we have exactly 1,000 students fully enrolled. Every seat is currently filled. I want to talk about sixth grade matriculation because it's something we talk about every year. Back in 2017, 76 fifth graders rolled up and became sixth graders. And that was the best number we had ever had since we opened our middle school. 76 back in 2017 was a huge celebration. We went from 76 to the next year, dropped 2 to 74. Last year, this time last year we were like 87. That's amazing. Well, as of today, we had 95. Now, there's only 112 kids total. So, 95 fifth graders rolled up into sixth grade. So our matriculation is getting even better. But here's something really interesting. The depth on the wait list is a telling story. Back in 2018, once we fully filled sixth grade, we only had 7 kids left on the wait list, which means if 8 kids dropped out of sixth grade, we might be in trouble. The following year, the wait list grew to 53. Just any mentally imagine. What do you think it is this year? From 7 to 53, the current sixth grade wait list is 204. So we are completely full with the largest matriculating group we've ever had, and we have 204 people standing in line to get in. I have to think it's in part because our K-8 is doing amazing things, and in part because our community knows we're growing to 12th grade. And so really proud of that work right there, and proud of the board for leading the way on all the work we're doing. Quick attendance piece, because I thought it was very interesting coming into Level 1 distance learning, like what's going to happen with attendance, who's going to show up. On day 1, we had 54 students absent at 9:30 a.m., which is a 95% attendance rate. We were actually very impressed with the 95% attendance rate because, well, we assumed there was going to be some technology glitches, people were going to have a hard time getting in, something was bound to go wrong. Mrs. Wells and her team made phone calls out, made 36 live connections, tried to get people back in, and on day 2, we had only 34 students absent, which is a 97% attendance rate. So as you know, we build our budget typically at 97%. I believe this year we may have dropped it to 96. But here we are on day 2, meeting our own very high expectations. Made 24 live conversations today. Still have a couple kids out there, though, that weren't at day 1 and weren't at day 2. Amy Wells knows them by first and last name, is about to drive to their house. So we'll try and call them again tomorrow, Amy. But great work on tracking down all of our kids for sure. Quick update on staffing. I know the Impact team has talked about staffing quite a bit as something that's important to us, and our strat plan certainly calls it out. We're 100% staffed. Our retention is very high. We had 4 certificated staff leave Westlake over the summer, and to replace those 4, we hired 6. I know I'm not great with math, but there's a promotion involved, and there was an expansion of a couple grade levels. So we had 4 new teachers to expand and to backfill, 1 brand new school psychologist, and 1 educational specialist, Daniel Schoenberg, who came back to the organization and replaced the vacancy left by Mrs. Jackson, now that she's the special education coordinator. And that would be a 95% staff retention rate, which is something we're very proud of. And the 7th year running now, the same certificated administrative team is together. We still have Mrs. Batten, Mrs. Kayau, Mrs. Ike is still part of the organization, myself, and we've added Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. O'Hagan, and Mrs. Sargent now that we're growing K-12. But the team has been together now for 7 years, and although the roles kind of shift around, we're very happy to have the whole team together there. Any questions on enrollment, staffing, any of that piece? Steve, you wanna jump on the budget piece? Cool. I'll run the slides.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think there's only like 32 or something like that.
It's 36. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. Just wanted to give the board an update where the budget stands. It's been a busy couple months, I think we all know. So just kind of looking back in time real quickly. Back in May and June, of course, we were bracing for pretty significant cuts, 10%, some said up to 15%. We were building a budget that had really some strategic reductions in it, including reductions for some planned staffing, travel, conferences, vendor costs. We're really looking at pulling the budget back because of the anticipated costs that were coming out of the May revise. Then we, of course, adopted the budget in June, and then the state adopted theirs shortly thereafter. And so we circled back into June and July-ish and found out that what the reality of the budget was. So the reality is that they did not fund COLA, which is essentially a cut of a little more than 2%. They kept LCFF funding flat, though, which was a great addition for schools across the state. But of course, they really piled on the deferrals and kind of spiked those up a little bit. And in addition to that, they also placed a cap on growth. So if you were, say, 900 kids one year, or you're going to 1,000 kids, they were going to hold everyone to those 900 students in a particular year and not fund any growth coming into this year. And that really impacted a lot of schools up and down the state. So now here we are in August, and click through again real quick. There we go. And we can see some changes that have come into play. So it has been a little bit of a roller coaster. We've got the Fed and the state dedicating some one-time funds to schools. For Westlake, it's about $460,000. Later on the agenda tonight is the Silicon Schools opportunity. They've come forth, and at least for this year, are looking to invest about $200,000 in the high school program. And then the net gain on the special education program, what was adopted in the state budget, is just about $77,000. So we've had some revenue gains on those side, and of course, as John talked about a little bit earlier, there's been some expenses as well. And if you look at the annual expense, we're doing the distance learning base camp that could, again, as John said, add up to about $360,000 or so. So on the revenue expense side, that's kind of where we're sitting. But we do know that the legislature is currently taking a look at the cap funding on growth. So again, before, if you were at 900 and you were growing to 1,000, the state was going to hold you at that 900 student funding. Now they're taking a look at actually funding you on that increased growth. And for us, again, we had looked at class size growth at K3, and of course we grew a fourth class in 8th grade, so we have seen some natural growth, but again, that's something that may be of a benefit to the school here in the coming months if what is going to talk about actually gets signed into law.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So yeah, on this piece, everybody, we had authorized, the board had authorized us to grow K3, which we have not done. Partly we did not do because the cap as part of that trailer bill that Steve was talking about. But also part of the reason we didn't do it is because the budget reality of July was not the same as the budget projections in June when we made that conversation. So we wanted to make sure the board understood where we were today. We have not increased class sizes K3, but we wanted to make sure that the board understood that because if we don't increase class sizes K3 by October, I think it's 7th, but really we're on fall break. I mean, if you don't really do it by the end of September, then you'll miss seedbeds and then you'll miss that opportunity. That window will close. And so I just want to put that out there to let you know it has not been our inclination thus far to increase K3 because the financial situation, the way it reads right now, feels okay. There is still potentially, though, a cliff out there that none of us know about mid-year. And so I transparently kind of put before the board what we have done and what we think we know, but no one has a crystal ball. So does anybody have a comment, thought, or concern about that piece?
How does potential revenue from increased numbers of students affect our ability to do the kind of distance learning camps and other things in a way that would address some equity challenges that we have? Is that funding actually not difference making? We're going to do whatever we're going to do as far as it relates to distance learning camp equity, or is it, well, actually, if there was additional funding that would be coming from growing the class sizes, it might make the difference between us being able to do a number of other things as it relates to equity during remote learning.
It's a good question. I mean, if you take these two topics in isolation, the increased class size K3 was going to be a net gain of $277,000. If you look at base by itself already, we have been allocated $360,000. I mean, could the one truly offset the other? Well, there'll be some costs with increasing class sizes as well. We know that. And there's also the potential hidden costs of many of these students needing to utilize that base distance learning cap. So I don't know that we have enough data to truly say that these two things in isolation offset, or that 277, or even what portion of that would directly be allocated to the base learning camps. And in reality, as it stands today, Jed, and you and I spoke a little offline about the learning camps. So in week 2, we have 57 people potentially interested, and we don't know what that number is going to do. Is that going to go up? Is it going to flatten? Is it going to go back down? We know that staff are a part of that number. It's a moving target, you guys. It's a good question. What would we do? I guess the question is, if we increase class sizes, what would we do with that $277,000? Right now, if nothing else changes in the budget, Steve, do we run if it was a snapshot today, would we be running a deficit today?
Sorry, were to include the projections on increased LCFF funding, right, which still needs to get, or the cap at least, which still needs to get wrapped in, then no, we wouldn't be running one.
Right. And that's
All other things considered, of course.
only based on 8th grade growth, Steve?
Correct.
Yeah. So if that goes through, and even if is that including if base generates zero revenue though?
No, in the model that I have, and again, this is a model on a
Right.
snapshot at a time,
Sorry.
I've knocked their revenue down, right? So going into the year, we anticipated about $360,000 with the revenue. And one of the models, at least, I've cut that down to $180,000. Again, who's to say whether that comes to fruition or not?
Right.
But again, with that dropping down, again, we still have a slight positive for the year.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the data we're looking for, Jed, if that answers your question regarding where we stand financially. Just nobody knows what happens with base enrollment, nor what happens with that, any potential financial cliff or, mid-year cut.
Okay, I guess the scenario that would make me ornery is we think that there is something that we could do as it relates to greater equity during this period that may cost more money. And we choose not to do it because of a budget reality that we could have partially addressed through growing class size. As long as I have just a general sense of assurance that's not going to happen, then I'm not going to be getting ornery.
Yeah, well,
but if I feel that we could be doing for a larger number of our low-income kids, whatever it is,
sure.
and we don't do it, and we've decided not to grow class sizes, I'm going to be a frustrated board member at that point.
Sure. And since you're the board member in charge of the $8 million reserve, are you comfortable with allocating $277,000 of the reserve so as not to grow class sizes, or would you prefer us to move into a class size growth situation?
Wait a second, I control the reserve? I didn't realize that.
Well, I think this board controls that, right? And I think what the question you're asking is, when it comes down to an equity issue and potentially increasing the capacity of base, that's going to cost money. Are we okay as a board with that money coming from our reserve? Or are you going to say, hey, don't touch that reserve, let's do class size increases? My pushback on class size increases is, I think the staff right now are living on adrenaline. I think we've been working hard all summer and we've lifted off the school year and it's a pretty exciting time. And Mrs. Patel's saying today, hey, this is pretty easy. I just wonder what happens 3 weeks from now with 40 more kids, what kind of pressure that applies on the organization. If it's worth 277, we should talk about it.
Well, John, can I chime in here too off of that point? What goes through my mind in terms of equity is my concern would be, does increasing class sizes lead to the possibility that we would achieve level 3 or 4 later, right? And so I'd like to have an understanding, at least before that decision is made, about, is it more equitable to try to get everybody together on campus, or I just think it's another factor to look at.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question too? Were you speaking of the state saying they were not going to provide any additional funding for growth this year as a deferment or as a deferral? Or
no,
I thought you mentioned the state was not going to provide increases for enrollment.
Yeah,
it was a hard cap. Sorry, yes, it was not a deferral. It was going to be what you had last year. You're going to get this year.
Right.
But that's what has been announced is probably going to change. For classroom-based schools, you probably will receive the additional funding for the additional kids. So, but just going back to my point, what I said I would be ornery about is if I felt like there was something that we needed to do in this moment to create greater sense of equity.
Yeah.
I didn't say I'd be ornery if we draw down a portion of our reserve. What I said is I'll be ornery if one way or another we think there's an incremental action or investment that we could have taken that really would have helped families and kids that might need something extra right now, and we didn't do it. That's the thing. And as long as you're feeling comfortable around the reserve, and we do have a fairly healthy reserve, then, it seems as though we've got a scenario under which we could do whatever we need to on an equity side and not have to do the class size increases. But, I just put it out there that my central focus right now is if there's something we need to be doing for higher needs families, we should be really doing everything we can to make that happen.
Agreed. Thank you. And I appreciate that support because we'll need it to do either of these scenarios. We're going to need the support of the board to say, hey, we're increasing class sizes because we need the money to support more students in base camps, or we'll need the support of the board to say, hey, we recognize why you didn't do that. To Hope's credit, we want to make sure we're ready to come back for levels, level 4 increased capacity by keeping class sizes small. That's why we increased 6 wide. However, we're going to need to draw down some of the reserves to do some work in those base camps. So either way, yeah, I appreciate that support. Ashley Patel?
Sorry. I really appreciate Jed's lens because it was definitely running in my brain. And I just wondered if the board understood at a deep enough level why we increased that 6 wide, and that it was for the hopes that we could return to school all at full capacity. And so I guess I have sort of a silly question, I guess, because it's impossible to know. But we've said till September 11th, and this thing is crazy, and it moves every single day. So the decision really lies on will we get back on campus? Then we shouldn't, and if we don't, then we should. And at what place can we make that call? It seems like. Because if we are never getting back on campus, then our reason to not increase is invalid, at least this year. But if there is a chance that this thing is going to finally, we can't because we might get all our babies in their rooms.
Right. So to answer that question, and it's great perspective, thank you, Ms. Patel. Hope you had asked if increasing class sizes would prevent us from getting back to the level 4, which is increased capacity, which is going back to school daily, at least kindergarten through 5th grade. And here's how the numbers we think work out. At 6 feet apart, we believe we can put 20 students in a classroom. Our kindergarten through 3rd grade right now are sized 18 and 19. Right? So you could increase class sizes and get everybody to 20 and come back to level 4. We could do that. In the 4th and 5th grade, they're already at 22, and we've done a little bit of sketching and thinking, well, we could maybe utilize some outdoor or flex space and actually get those grade levels back as well. So it wouldn't be a deal breaker to increase to 20, but it makes it a little harder, a little more complicated, and a little more of a rubber band stretch for people who just opened the school year with maybe the most challenging problem to solve they've ever had to solve in their career. And now we're like, you got your feet on the ground? Here's a couple more kids. So I say that in defense of the people who are in the driver's seat. Had we increased class sizes 3 weeks ago, it wouldn't have been so hard. But we did not do that because AB 77 said, well, you won't get the increased enrollment dollars for that. So we had good logic to not do it when we didn't do it. Now that we have the possibility of doing it, as Jed said, we think this is going to pass. And if it does, we have a hard decision to make. Josh?
So I guess my question is, we continue to focus on what would happen, tomorrow if we made this change. What will happen this year if we make this change? What will happen for the 2021 school year for the 2022 school year? Because if we do increase size in kindergarten, that's going to trickle all the way up. Is there a way to forecast what future years might look like? I know that's not easy to do. If we made this change, so we can take into account what it'll look like the next 2 years, in addition to what it'll look like this year.
Yeah, we have a history with this type of work because this increased class size conversation. We always talk it like this is the emergency, break the glass in case of emergency. And there has been an emergency at Westlake Charter School before. We're like, okay, let's increase class sizes, and we call it kind of a bubble. You increase class sizes at K1, 2, 3, and then the next year it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The next year, those kids move up to 2, 3, 4, 5, and they move through the organization like that. So it's not so hard to forecast what that could look like. However, we could also say, hey, as natural matriculation happens in future years, you wouldn't necessarily backfill to the previous size, right? So you wouldn't inherently class size of 24 could dwindle down to class size of 22 as a period of years goes on and students move to Roseville or wherever they go. So it's not so hard to forecast that reality going forward, since we have a history of having done it before. Good. Any other thoughts you'd like to share? I know this charge is mine, and the board has charged admin with making this decision. I just really wanted to transparently put it in front of you today so you knew the thought processes that we're grappling with. It is not an easy decision. If we had a crystal ball, we'd be making the right decision. We know that if we make one decision, there's going to be some real strife right now to make it happen. If we make another decision, we could wake up in November and go, darn it, that was the wrong decision. So we're grappling with that decision, and I appreciate any feedback you have and that you took some time to entertain it today. Any last thoughts you'd like to share before we move forward? Cool. All right, thank you, everybody. So actually, this is perfectly relevant because we go from here to the conversation around, well, how would we reopen schools? And I just want to make sure tonight that everybody understood what the process is in Sacramento County to reopen schools, and we asked Hope to put together a presentation. So, Hope, are these slides yours?
Yes, they are.
All right.
And Michelle, please chime in if you know anything that's more current than what I have to say. I won't feel bad if you take over. Not that I expect you to, because I don't, don't worry. We go to the next slide, please, John. So basically, we wanted to start off by sharing with you what the county's information page looks like if you go to the state COVID website, right? And these criteria listed on this page is what the state's been using in order to determine whether or not a county is on basically on the list, right? Is there, average number of tests, the case positivity rates, hospitalizations, hospital capacity. You'll notice on this chart, though, that we do have check marks in Sacramento County for hospitalization and hospital capacity, whereas for the different rates of infection, we have dashes. And that's because for the last almost 2 weeks now, there's been some concern about the state CalReady database and sort of what those numbers are showing, and are they properly being attributed to the right days. Now, we do know that the backlog has been cleared. The state has been able to process those. The data's gone back to the counties for assigning all the proper data, for instance, potential testing dates or infection dates, symptomatic, asymptomatic, all of that fun stuff. But it's just not all out there yet. I heard today that the goal is to have that data released tomorrow. But this is sort of what we're dealing with in COVID world, is the fact that we don't really have current up-to-date infection rates right now. Hopefully soon. The graphic to the left is today's data on, again, that same website, where you're able to select county by county, and it will give you your current new cases along with different averages. And it's useful, but again, if this was bigger, that orange language towards the top would be the disclaimer that while we've processed the backlog, this is not up to date yet, aka please don't rely on it. Really follow up with your local county resources. They have some information you might be able to use. John, will you please go to the next slide? Oh, great. I reloaded this wrong. Oh, I didn't do this slide. This is not my phone. So basically, this is what those same criteria are in more word format. So the county monitoring data includes the 14-day case rate as well as the 7-day positivity rate. Using those two pieces, it's public health officials are using that to determine sort of what, is there a potential outbreak or a potential rise in cases? Because they're really concerned about elevated disease transmission, right? Because if more people are together and that rate is up, it will spread more quickly. The case rate they're using is they want you to have less than 100 cases per 100,000 residents. Or for smaller counties, they're using the case rate of greater than 25 and the testing positivity rate of a greater than 8%. Now, luckily, and I believe, Michelle, you might know, a lot of counties are now below that 8% positivity rate. So it's going to be very interesting to see, again, how these numbers, once they're updated, what they show. They're also looking for increasing hospitalization rates as well as ICU capacity. I work in a smaller county that often has a lesser number of ICU beds available. We've hit 0% a number of times over the last few months, and the state's been actually pretty understanding about that. What this number doesn't show is surge capacity, right? So while you might see a decrease in the number of ICU beds, that doesn't mean that hospitals in your area don't have the ability to increase and handle those patients. So basically, they want it to be less than 10% increase in the average number of confirmed patients in your hospital, and they want to make sure that you have more than 20% of your ICU beds staffed and available, or I forget the other, right, and your ventilators. Luckily, in the state of California, ventilators are in pretty prolific supply right now. I believe we're over 13,000, so that's a real positive feature. Counties right now are not being added. They're not being removed. Optimistically, they say the data will be up to date by tomorrow. Then they can start looking at the 14-day totals and determining whether or not counties can come off the monitoring list. I wouldn't hold my breath on that. It's been a solid goal for pretty much over a week now. So we'll see what comes. Basically, like everything else this pandemic has taught us, is to try to just provide everyone some grace while we sort this out. What comes with this, though, is 38 counties are currently on this monitoring list. And with that came the reopening waiver process. The two graphics at the bottom of this slide are just sort of reference points. The bar chart on the left is cases in Sacramento County for the month of July. And so you can sort of see the trend up, and then the sloping back down, which is providing some optimism. Again, very much subject to change. So we'll see how that plays out. And then on the right side, the number, or left side, I don't know. The blue dots are your hospitalization ICU rates. And the reason why I put this in for Sac County is you do see, while the number still looks high, it is flat. And so that's a real positive feature. So the waiver process was issued by the California Department of Public Health, but I include the county data because ultimately you would apply to your local public health office. And it is required, schools can only apply if they're in a county with a 14-day case rate that is not more than 2 times the threshold. AKA, you can't have greater than 200 per 100,000 residents taking place. Sacramento County, last time I looked, and around our local counties are somewhere between 115 and 190. Again, who knows with that data and if it's 100% correct right now. But most of the counties in this area are below that current 200 per 100,000 threshold. It only applies to schools that are TK through 6. And by schools, that's a little bit too limited. It's really grade level. So even though Westlake is a K-8 charter school, we could still only apply to reopen for that waiver for TK through 6. So 7 and 8 would have to stay in distance learning as long as it was mandated. What's interesting about this plan is you have to be able to explain who you consulted and how. So they want to know that you've talked to all your stakeholders, including labor organizations if you have them, or staff leadership teams. Have you met with WAVE, in our case, to discuss options and what that looks like? As well as then completing and reviewing your health and safety plan so you can submit an application to Sacramento County Department of Public Health, and that application must be submitted 14 days prior to your desire to reopen. And then once you have applied to Sacramento County, then any application would be reviewed with California Department of Public Health to make sure it met all the application requirements. And part of this is including all the school reopening plans. And I think, Westlake has done so much work towards that. What's their cleaning and disinfection plan? How do you plan to cohort? How do you plan entrance, egress, and movement? Face coverings. Basically, all the things that you see in your in your traditional plans are requirements of this application. So making sure that you've got everything figured out while taking into account all HIPAA and FERPA requirements. It's an interestingly complex process. Now, Sacramento County Public Health last week did let schools and school districts within the county know that until the technology issues with the state's disease registry system, that's the CalReady that I mentioned earlier, are resolved, and they can fully understand what's going on in Sac County, they will not be accepting any applications for waivers for in-person instruction in Sacramento County. While this is ongoing, though, they have been working to figure out how best to do surveillance testing for schools, as well as continuing to monitor the best way to do contact tracing, so that once schools are able to open, they are able to provide assistance in sort of determining what happens next should a positive test come back with someone on campus. So at this time, it's really unclear about what a school district's next steps are. And so what we would be interested in knowing from the board is if it becomes possible in the relative short term that the county is willing to take waivers again, how is the board feeling about this process? Is it something where you'd like to wait and see what other schools are doing? Basically, we're trying to do a comfort test on where you think we're at in this process and what your recommendations are. To be clear, you would certainly know if we were applying for a waiver, because again, we'd have to have those meetings with staff, that meeting with WAVE. It would be very public that we were applying for a waiver, and we wouldn't do that without calling a special meeting of this board or putting it on the September agenda. So nothing is being decided tonight, but like I've mentioned, the application does require a bit of legwork and planning, and so to know how the board is feeling about this would be really helpful for the planning of admin and our time on this. So any comments, much appreciated. Michelle.
First, let me say, hope that you can do my job if you ever want it, because that was such a great presentation in summary of what's going on. It's no surprise I'm living through a lot of different conversations around school reopenings and around this COVID and what's happening. The one thing that I would just add to this conversation is that there's a lot of responsibility on schools should you reopen, even let's say once the time comes where schools can, absent the waiver process, and that includes potentially having to seek out your own testing capacity for the schools, as well as potentially having to play a role in contact tracing because of the level of resources that may not be available. And just to give you kind of a sense, if you think about all of the schools in Sacramento County, there's no way that contact tracers for the county level would likely be able to cover all of that. And so there would have to be partnerships. And so some of the things that are just being explored at a high level is if the school would have to play a role in calling all of the families and seeing who has been exposed and so forth. So there's another level of engagement that is part of this conversation, and potentially a lot of staff work, probably in the admin team, that would also be a part of that. So I just wanted to add that. Kind of taking off, well, no, I can't take off that hat, but just to kind of go back into kind of the board member mode, the one thing that I would say is this is not a scenario from my perspective in COVID world where it is fun to be first. There's a lot of learning that I think schools can do and watching other reopenings happen. I also think that when there is a waiver process, you're essentially saying it may be safe to reopen, even though we're on the monitoring list, and even though technically things may not fully look great, but we're going to take the chance anyway. And I think that's a very interesting conversation to weigh with your community and the families that depend on us. And then the last thing that I would just say is the risk of spread, as we're seeing in other schools that are starting to happen in different states and so forth. That also impacts, as much as we all want to be back on campus, it also can impact our distance learning resources as well, because you could have teachers who potentially are out sick, and now how are we backfilling those teachers to teach even in distance learning mode? And there's still going to be a fair amount of teetering that may happen. So if there's so many cases at a school, the school may have to shut down again. And so we have to think about what it means in terms of the health of our administrators and our teachers and the students, but then also what that means for the continuity of learning. And I think from my perspective, it's not I would not rush to be first in this race.
Right, and it's going to be interesting that if the numbers are improving, what part of the reopening plan happens and how, and if we see bumps again, and what those tests will show us in terms of what is, safe for schools and whatnot. I mean, part of me personally is hoping that schools aren't that guinea pig, that we don't come off the list and then move right into reopening, and then instead of logically maybe reopening a restaurant. There's ways we could take steps. So I really appreciate, Michelle, you sharing that. It's hard. It's not a race I want to win, I don't think. But that's just me, and so I would love to hear what other board members have to think too, if they want to share.
Okay. So, I appreciate everything that is said so far, and agree. The model, John has talked about this model of how we open, and said that in the past that we could go into level 3 and possibly go back into level 2. But I think we should try our best to look at this as a linear model. Like once we start that reopening process, that steady move to slowly reopen just feels good to me. That we're constantly moving in that direction, and of course not necessarily being the first ones out the gate, although I do feel like if anyone can do it right, we can do it right, and we can do it safely and protect our families and our kids as we do it. But I agree that that as we open up, we should definitely look to our district and look to our surrounding schools to see what best practices are. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vasa. Josh, then Ashley.
Well, Vasa, you kind of stole my thunder there a little bit, but I don't think we should be first by any means. I know we want to sprinkle some Westlake on it, and that's what we do best, and we've done very well creating a distance learning model. And I agree with Vasa that we, react to it more as a community where we have other resources, potentially through the district. If the district makes this decision to go back, I think that through all the COVID process, the one group of people that we've kept safe are the kids. And I don't want to risk that. So I'm all for waiting until the time is right, that we know we can start progressing through the levels versus we're in, we're out, particularly if people have kids at other schools in the district. If we're open, other schools aren't, or vice versa. I think it could cause additional hardship on the parents in the community. So I'm all for feeling it out a little bit first.
Ashley?
Yeah, I just say ditto to everyone. Michelle, you spoke so so well, and I was just thinking how lucky we are to have the people on this board that we do. I think that in my own experience with COVID in the last week, be it students that we know have someone in the home that are positive, be it any staff that has to quarantine, I cannot imagine us being the first at this one. We are the first at everything, but we are the first at everything that we can be the first at because we are so good at what we do. And so if you pull out the so good at what we do, it doesn't include being first here. And we've seen all the newsreels, right? They've been open for 4 days and they've got 75 cases. And I look at my own experience and I really I lean on, we are educators, and this thing is so moving and different, and we really need to think about who and where we are. We are in the most diverse zip code in America, and for that reason, our kids are home in families who this is not their first language. And if it is confusing for those of us who it is our first language, then it is extra confusing. And so families, there is a huge amount of education that needs to happen before we can open safely, because inadvertently families could send a kid to school because they don't understand the process. The kid's fine, the kid's not symptomatic, they're the sick one, and now they can rest because the kid's out of the house and getting taught. There's just so much education that needs to happen for all of our multiple languages, for understanding, to evade frustration. And the education keeps changing. It's not even the same rule yesterday as it is today. So yeah, not being the first out of the gate, I'm with the board.
Were there any other board members? Sean, I see you, Sean. You're next.
And then Nancy.
You saw Nancy? Okay. I can't see Nancy.
So I would agree with what everybody said, and just point out that they're kind of along the lines of what Ashley just said, that there are things which are also beyond our control. So it's not even just so much what we do or what our families do, but what's the turnaround on the testing? If people are waiting 7 to 14 days to get a test result back, what's happening in that 7 to 14 days? Are the kids back at school in person during that time, and then we find out that there was a test that was pending and they were positive, and now we've had 14 days of whatever going on. So it again, being this is not a race to win. This is a race to watch and see how it's going, and then jump in at the end.
Jump in.
Oh, great job, by the way.
So I obviously echo what everybody's saying. One of the things that Michelle mentioned that really resonated with me was that, we're talking about a waiver process and the perception of what that looks like if we're applying for a waiver, almost going against, the box that they put COVID in. So I do want to make sure that not only are first out of the gate, but that we're very mindful that, the things that we do at Westlake, we do it right. And just from my own gut feel, like asking for a waiver just doesn't feel right. So it as a parent, it would give me pause, because, exactly that. It's that, oh, well, are you guys going to follow the rules? Or are you not? Or, you're asking for an exemption, essentially, from the rules, and, rules that were put in place to, be at the betterment of, the overall good. It's like wearing a mask, right? So I just feel like if we're going to make any kind of decision to, put out a waiver, that we're very mindful of what that looks like in our community.
Jed.
So I would just make one comment, which is I agree that we don't want to be first. I also think there's a big difference between being first and saying that what the district's baseline is going to be our baseline. Making a waiver request seems like you're so early that you're almost choosing to make yourself a pariah, and I don't think we have that to be done. I just think there are going to be other shades of gray down the road where there very reasonably could be something that we would do, and others in the area may choose not to. And so I just think we should revisit the question at that point. But that's probably something very different than, or would be like among the very few that try to do some kind of waiver process. The second thing I would just say is that where I am much more tolerant of risk, however, is in this area of pushing for equity within the remote learning mode that we're in right now. I like a lot what you're doing, John, in terms of, I was using this term, pods, whatever it is. I am willing to embrace risk for us to make our facilities available to families that do not have homes that would accommodate this kind of thing. I'm definitely up for spending more money to make those things more viable. I think there are things we need to think about from an HR and staffing perspective, because some adults that work for us will probably be in contact with those groups of kids. That is not utterly riskless, right? And I think it's likely that we're going to stay in this mode for a long time. And the more that we can get focused on how we do that well, rather than are we recalibrating every 2 days or every 2 weeks about whether or not we apply for a waiver or whatever. No, there's a pretty strong sense right now. This is going to be a default. Let's make sure our default is really, really great. And within a default mode, if we want to push the envelope to make sure that kids that have been historically underserved get something special at Westlake, that is something that is worth us, I think, really looking hard at, and perhaps being willing to do things differently than many other schools might do.
That's good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you see any hands, John? We have different people on our screens.
I think I don't see any hands. No.
Okay. My big fear is there's now rumbling amongst the counties that some of them are going to come off the monitoring list here shortly based on the new data that's being released. And so my fear is ultimately not even the waiver process. It's how do we approach opening when it's just, widespread permissible, and is that the right choice for us? Luckily, that's not our decision for today. It's just something for board members to have in their back of their minds as the data starts to roll out here in the next few days. The other thing I just wanted to highlight for you is a resource that's embedded in the slides. There is a link to the waiver process document that the California Department of Public Health released on August the 3rd. If you'd like to look at it, and right there at the top, if you'd like to take the time to read through that, it does a really good job of outlining the different criteria and what you need to meet. And it's just a way for you just to understand what they're looking at and what some of that data and how it plays together. I certainly, I have heard what the board said. I only pointed out just so you have all the education available to you on the subject. So with that, John, I think that concludes the executive director's report.
It does. Thank you so much, Hope, for presenting, and Steve as well. And thank you, everybody, for an engaging conversation. That was great.
John, will you do me a favor and just double check to see if we got any public comment on it?
Yes, great minds think alike.
Are you sending that code by back signal strong?
I just checked. This is 30 seconds ago, and we had no comments. I'll swipe over and look again, but no public comments.
Perfect. Thank you. So that brings us to our consent agenda. We have 2 items on tonight, which is accept and approve the minutes from the July board meeting, as well as accept and approving any the monetary donations. If there are no questions on those 2 items, I would ask for a motion.
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ashley.
Nancy,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Vasa,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yeah.
and Jed.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Luke.
So that now brings us to our regular agenda, and not something we do very often. So now we're going to hold a public hearing regarding the 2020-2021 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. Steve, before I open that public hearing, do you have anything you need to present?
So there's not a presentation item on this tonight. The plan was in the board packet when it went out on Friday, and it was on the agenda up front. I would just ask again if there's any comments submitted to admin, just so we can check that to see.
I'm looking at admin at Westlake Charter right now. I just did a refresh, and there are no public comments.
All right, so I will open the public hearing and then close the public hearing. And then this item will come back for approval by the board at our September meeting. That brings us to our next agenda item, which is adopt resolution authorizing the executive director to negotiate and accept grant from the Silicon Schools Fund. So this resolution was in your board packets for tonight. John, was there anything specifically you wanted to say about it?
Well, ironically, I would typically make this a shout from the rooftop celebration. I would have led with this. I would love to thank Jed Wallace for the initial introduction. As you all know, this is a very long and courting process working with Silicon Schools, but they have approved us at their board level for an $800,000 multi-year grant. Fantastic celebration. Along with that, $800,000 of financial support. They would also be engaging us in a network of other schools who are also launching their high school in the fall of 21. And so we've already been in contact. There's a school in Fresno and a school in Salinas, I believe, that will be a part of our 2021 cohort. So it's just kind of a neat opportunity. However, I have not shouted it from the rooftops nor celebrated it broadly because we do have to engage in an agreement with them. The agreement is not overly restrictive, but there are some items that we'd like to negotiate and just say, hey, let's make sure we all agree on these language points. So we're just asking for the authorization tonight to engage in that negotiation, and then come back to the board, at which time we will then celebrate that we have a multi-year agreement.
Right, and with that, in the language within the resolution is embedded that so long as the agreement that it meets the mission and vision as well as the strategic plan that John had the authority to, or his designee, but John had the authority to enter into any agreements as well as any other necessary like financial transactions. But I think that's an excellent summary of the item. Were there any board questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I will.
Ashley first. Josh, you want to do the second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Oh, Amy just said it. Yes, I'll vote yes. You put yes in there. I can't hear. You're muted.
Totally hard to vote when I'm muted. Sorry, guys.
I was like, oh, she got muted. Yes, I'm good.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Hope,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Vasa,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yeah.
and Jed.
Yes.
Great. So that brings us to future agenda items. like I just mentioned, in September, we will have the 2020-2021 Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan on the agenda. I also have the goal of bringing back goal setting for the board for the 2020-2021 school year. Were there any, COVID will likely still be on the agenda in September. Are there any other topics that the board wishes? I see John raising his hand. You don't have to raise your hand.
I was just waving. We would like to invite high school principal Batten out in September to give a September update on the high school progress.
Yes. Anything else that board members are interested in hearing about?
Well, if it's Michelle, in the event that we're still in distance learning mode at that point, John, would it be possible for you to bring back updated statistics about attendance?
Yeah, love it, for sure.
Thank you.
Great idea, Michelle. Thank you.
What's the status on the impact committee bringing back ideas around equity, especially in the George Floyd era? I thought that was a great thing to suggest before, Shannon, and I just wanted to know where your conversations are going and what timing for broader discussion at the board.
Yeah, I think depending on the calendar, I think we can probably next month at least have an early conversation. We didn't meet for Impact this month, so I don't necessarily have a great gauge, but we will meet in 2 weeks and talk about what we've been reading and at least try and come up with a plan for how we want to apply that. So I think we could craft some sort of agenda items to reflect or have the whole board reflect to.
That'd be great. And on that note, Shannon and Jed, as I was mentioning earlier today, our entire staff is engaged in this work. As of this last week, we, as an entire whole school community, read through the George Floyd letter and committed to the reflective, transformative actions called for in the letter. And we're starting a staff leadership team that's going to be doing some work on this, launching this month, and I would love to get that team and our impact team kind of dovetailed together. One of the initial actions that were potentially being discussed, I know at Impact, was, for example, redrafting a little piece of that strategic plan to include anti-racism as one of our concepts, our key components of global citizenry. Right now, it's defined as as embracing equity, diversity, inclusivity, and cultural competence. But we think that adding or reworking it to include anti-racism is probably a key component moving forward. So I think Impact will discuss that, and I would love to combine Impact and the work of our staff leadership and bring in some community members as well. So Jay, we should have quite a bit to report back in the coming 30 to 60 days.
Okay. And I think part of that too, Jay, will come forward with as Charter Impact works on their goals for 2020 and 2021, just to focus what that work looks like, and that would certainly be coming back to the board shortly.
Great. Yeah, I think there are this can have so many different entry points, because there's certainly discussion about what's happening with staff and what's happening with our instructional practices. We could also be talking about what are the demographics of our staff? What is the demographics of our board? What are the demographics of our students? Are we actually getting to the level of representativeness that we want? I think we also know that we operate in a place where there are terrible inequities within our public education system, and we are operating our school in a way that's different than those. But because we do not want to be causing conflict, we often shut up about the fact that we do these things differently. And I really think that a conversation that would be good for us to have at the board level is whether or not, as we make our high school, that will be in stark contrast to all of the other high schools or most of the other high schools in this region, whether or not we are going to continue to shut up about the fact that we operate differently, or are we going to speak more forcefully about the fact that we're doing it and put pressure on others to start doing the same. Those things could make things uncomfortable for us. But I believe in the George Floyd era, that's what's incumbent upon us. So I really look forward to those conversations whenever they can happen.
Yeah. If I could just on the high school note, Jed, and for the entire board, we are taking one action that was discussed today with Principal Batten, who is enrolling in a graduate level certificate course on restorative justice, because it is our full intention that the high school will be a model for these types of practices, and really a beacon where some people regionally may speak to it. We believe it'll be at the center of what we do. So I just, as a small token of it, at one action that's being taken now as part of that greater conversation, I just wanted to echo that out. Cool. Josh, you waving?
Yeah, I just, well, hello. Since we're talking about the high school, I know that we're, if I'm not mistaken, we're officially now less than a year away from opening the high school. And I think that it's not on the back burner by any means, but I'm curious where we are, as far as infrastructure, campus selection, how that's going to look. I know that we're working through a lot of stuff and it's ongoing. I would just like some more information on where we are in that process. I know you guys have it, locked down as far as curriculum. We've got Mrs. Batten lined up. We've kind of got the best and the best ready to roll all that out. I just kind of want to get a better feel for where we are facilities-wise.
Yeah. And as it's not an agenda item tonight, we won't dive in, but I promise you on this future agenda, I promise in September, we'll have Mrs. Batten unpack all of our current reality then. In fact, what's the date of the next board meeting, Hope? Sorry, you were muted, but I'm assuming...
Is it the 10th?
Okay.
It's the 10th.
Thank you. The reason I ask is because our FUA, our Facilities Use Agreement with the Thomas Unified School District, has to be buttoned up by the 15th. So maybe a future board item for next month might be the approval of the FUA as it comes through. So that would really give us some real detail, Josh. Cool.
That'd be great to have it on the agenda next month, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great. Mrs. Patel?
This could be a really terrible idea, but in all of our discussion, but John would say no idea is a bad idea. Throw it on the table and think about it. So it keeps running in my mind that possibly at our next board meeting, the conversation of class growth may come back up based on everything that was said tonight. And so I wonder, and again, this could be a terrible idea, but all these equity conversations that we're having tonight make me wonder if we find a middle ground, if that is necessary. If we see that this thing is going for the long haul, and September we say anything about it being a good idea to increase class sizes, or we are leaned more that way, I wonder how many of the students on the current wait list, and if that number could be brought back, are families. Because I know how impossible these schedules are, and if at least you're in the same school, your schedule in your house is a little bit more possible.
Yeah, and actually, we did do the numbers on it, Ms. Patel, and I can bring them back for the board because in the order of the preference call, your next people on the wait list are siblings. So you could do a sibling conversation, and I won't give you numbers now, but I do recall it was a significant number. It may have been half of the enrollment or a third of the enrollment that we were anticipating. So it's no bad ideas. We can bring that.
Knowing that they're the next ones on the list, that's why I kind of wondered.
Yeah.
Maybe we do a half-Z model to serve our families.
Write that down, Ingrid, as half-C.
We get a term every meeting. It's awesome.
I love it.
I think it's legit.
Yeah, I'll have to, yeah, that's a good one. That's yours, Patel, forever. Your half-Z. Before we get to reflection, John, would you do one more check for any public comment, please?
Yes, ma'am. And refreshing now, but currently seeing none. And hit the refresh button. And there's none. No, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to go alphabetical for reflection because, why not? Amy, would you like to reflect? Sorry, you're used first.
Totally, I will reflect. I love the board's commitment to keeping us on the focus of what's doing right for our kids and our school community. I really respect you guys and the hard decisions that you have to make, and appreciate that you are mindful of how that impacts me personally and everybody else that I work with, because these are my family, these are my peeps, and it feels good to know that you guys consider that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Amber, I see you're still on. Would you like to reflect? Maybe not. Okay, so we'll go to Ashley and then Jen.
I just, I look at the seats that all these board members hold when they're outside of this room or these rooms for this purpose, and just how lucky we are. Like the knowledge that Hope brings, that Michelle brings. Who knew we were going to be here in February when we had our meeting? Maybe February, maybe who knew we were going to be here in January? But just, this thing is so confusing, and to have people who get it, really get it, help us be in such a better position for our entire community, and that is just amazing.
Okay. Jed and then John.
I'm just dittoing Ashley. Perfect.
Okay. John, then Josh.
I'll ditto Jed, and I would like to double down and say that I'm super appreciative of the push toward equity and the recognition of the hard work that needs to be done on so many levels. Amber Houston's on the call right now. She's holding foster puppies apparently, but Houston and I have been talking once or twice a week all summer and working incredibly hard on this childcare issue. And through her partnership and the commitment of the school staff, working to get us where we are today, but the board pushing even further and saying, don't give up. Yes, money matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. And then to pivot and say it's not just about that piece, but let's look at the George Floyd conversation, the equity and the inclusivity, the anti-racism, the impact committee. I just love this 360-degree lens around this important topic, and the fact that we're all very cognizant of that. It's a financial issue, a personnel commitment, a time commitment, a growth for all of us, a stretch, but it's the right work to do. So just thank you, board. I don't know that you all know how unique and important the work you're doing is. So thank you all for pushing this school in this direction.
Josh, then Michelle.
Well, John, you said you weren't going to sing it from the rooftops, but I am celebrating that Silicon Valley schools grant. Jed, thank you for bringing that in. John, working that. We're able to have these hard conversations have gotten easier and have given us a little bit more flexibility to have them because of that. And I just didn't want that to go. It needed more recognition. We went halvesies, Ashley. We need to go full.
Michelle, then Nancy.
I just want to celebrate the commitment that shines through in these conversations in this board meeting, not just of the board members, but of the staff and even of the families that with the public comment that we received today, which was amazing. I just think everybody, it just shows the spirit of Westlake, which is, that collaboration and everybody kind of rowing in the same direction for the children. So just wanted to celebrate that commitment.
Nancy, then Shannon.
Sorry, I always have to try to get ahead of getting off of mute. So I would absolutely ditto Michelle and really what everybody else has said during this meeting. The commitment of the board to, from different perspectives, but all the same perspective, looking at what's best for our kids and our staff. So I absolutely appreciate that. I do want to just add one more reflection. I don't like the fact that I haven't seen you guys in person since really February because I missed the March meeting. But I absolutely appreciate our ability to eat dinner while we're doing this meeting. Because I know I wasn't the only one. There were other people chewing. And I was like, oh, thank God, I'm not the only one like scrambling to figure out how to get dinner in my body, and today's meeting was only 2 hours. So I absolutely applaud that and appreciate that as well. So kudos to my dinner mates tonight while we were on mute.
See, I've been eating computers, so it's just for me nice to have other people eating with me, right? Because normally these are like marathon sessions,
Exactly.
and I think often all the budget savings on the fact that you're not having to feed me every month. But yeah, so good time. Nice one, Nancy. I like that. Shannon and Sean.
Yeah, always here for eating. But I will. I think again, kind of ditto what everyone else said, but specifically again, I think to Jed's last points around like the equity aspect, that this is going to be hard, and it's only made more challenging because we are in a pandemic, and there's always going to be other things that are tempting to take that first priority and all of our energy. And I think that ultimately, like, why all of us do a lot of what we do is for some of the, achieving more of these equitable outcomes. So I just appreciate the willingness of this group to start having these hard conversations and know that it's probably going to get harder, but that, we're here and supportive and willing to do that to kind of push Westlake in the right direction.
Sean, and then Steve, if you want to reflect.
So I liked the discussion around the reopening that we had. I liked the fact that, like the reopening handbook, where health and safety is the primary focus, we can't do anything without that. That was this board's kind of approach also, that, we could rush ahead, and all the people who have the really hard choices about childcare could have that sorted out by us opening, but then also realizing that it could then all come crashing down if we don't keep health and safety at the forefront. And I really appreciated that discussion.
Thanks, Sean. Steve, did you want to reflect?
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. Just appreciate everyone's different lenses that they bring to the table. We are much stronger as a team, and I appreciate this team so much. And we just get better together.
Thanks, Steve. Vasa.
Great celebrations, everyone. I think I just, I keep thinking about our students and, how flexible and innovative they are. They're the ones at home pushing all the buttons. They're the ones at home having to troubleshoot, and be their own tech support, and tech support the kid that's sitting across from them at the table. So we just have Explorers are some of the best students you can get, and we're very lucky to have those little guys to work with every day.
I just want to reflect, it's my bookshelf, John knows this, has grown immensely with all of the various books I'm trying to read for Charter Impact, because I can't seem to start small. But that's what I think I like most about this board. We all jump in with both feet, right? We don't do anything small, but we take the time to reflect on what we've learned and use it. And I appreciate, and if you haven't read it yet, the best thing Sean did as finance chair was have us do a book study and read the culture code, because I know I toot this horn so often, and I am so sorry about that, but if you haven't read it yet, please read it, because I think that it just, during these times, to have that sort of just a framework to approach these decisions has really been fabulous, Sean. So I heard it in our conversations tonight. We all use the terminology, whether we know it or not, and it's just great. Yes, I will give you my copy, Ashley. Well, I don't know. I have to part with it. I have it on my desk, so I see it all the time to make sure that it helps guide me. Kind of like I always felt like the compass does in the cafeteria. just that reminder of how to make decisions. But either way, if you get a chance to read it, and I will get you mine, Ashley, I'll drop it by your house. It really helps. I think it could be useful in a different way as we stretch different rubber bands. With that, John, did you have anything else before I adjourn?
No, ma'am.
Nope. So then I will adjourn at 8:32 and just thank everybody for coming. That's actually short for us lately, so I'll take it.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody,
Very good, everyone.
stay safe, stay healthy. Bye, guys.
Bye.